We didn't receive a copy of this report until about an hour ago, and the mayor told us today he hasn't even had a chance to read it yet. But during a press conference today, we spoke with a Freeh Group representative who kind of highlighted some portions of that report. But it is important to note that we didn't go through all of it. He suggested we get together in a couple of weeks to go through it completely and ask some questions. It's also important to note that this report doesn't highlight the good coming out of the department, just focuses on where they need to improve.
The city, through its leaders, determined that there are issues with the police department.
9 months after a company was hired to probe the Fort Myers Police Department, they've released their findings.
You don't have to look far across America to find strife and challenges with law enforcement, the anti-law enforcement sentiment that exists in this nation today.
The city agreed to a $150,000 contract with Freeh Group International Solutions in May of last year. The investigation began in September. The company says they interviewed 200 officers anonymously and found a number of issues within the department, including preferential treatment.
The great majority, if not almost every single person we interviewed, said there was a cliquish system within the department. You either were in or you were out.
Chief Derek Diggs says he's done a lot to improve the department since joining a few months ago.
We have stopped 6 mass shootings. We've confiscated more weapons than any other comparable time period. We have improved the safety of our citizens and our neighborhoods, and we will continue to do so.
Now, the report also noted a failure to address integrity issues, and I want to read a portion of that report to you. They say the department took no action to address allegations that officers leaked information to drug dealers about search warrants. The report also notes that some of those officers who may have leaked that information were promoted. We'll have a lot more on that and this report coming up tonight at 5 and 6. Live in downtown Fort Myers, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston is digging for answers on to how the department will fix these problems. And Michelle, we're being told the mayor has not even read the report yet. Is that true?
That's what he told us this afternoon. And Councilmember Johnny Streets also said he hasn't read it yet. Councilmember Forrest Banks says he skimmed it and wasn't surprised by what was inside.
Crime activities, the shootings, and all that stuff has sort of been building for the last 4 years.
So why wait 4 years to hire this company?
Well, you have people that you rely on, and it's very difficult. The police, the chief runs the department. We don't run the department.
Fort Myers City Council member Forrest Banks says he's known for about 4 years now that something wasn't right at the Fort Myers Police Department.
You know, there's some serious things, but I think it's just a part of the culture that's developed over time.
A newly released report gives the public an inside look at some alarming accusations. Officers planting drugs, talking to dealers before search warrants, forming cliques within the department, and some officers moving up in rank without qualifications. Only Wink News stopped Police Chief Derek Diggs at City Hall today to find out what is next for the department.
We're going to move forward and do the things we need to do as a police department.
The city manager hired the Freeh Group to complete this report. The city paid them $150,000. We asked to sit down with him today to find out if he also suspected issues within the department. This is what the city spokeswoman had to say when we asked why she was speaking on his behalf.
Because I'm the public relations coordinator. It's my position. He's busy and I don't really know how to answer that.
Now, coming up tonight at 6, we'll have more on our exclusive interview with the mayor, who again says more than 24 hours after receiving this report, he still hasn't read it. Live in Fort Myers, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
Michelle, thank you. Reporter Michelle Kingston talked with people in Dunbar today about how the community can move forward. She's live at police headquarters covering that story. Michelle.
It's an alarming report, but it recommends a 5-year plan, and that plan has people hopeful.
You know, lately there's kind of a lot of shooting, some here, down the streets here and there.
Arthur Jones has lived in Dunbar for 25 years.
You don't know which way the bullet's going.
He read some of the investigation into the Fort Myers Police Department, which details allegations of corruption, outlining a culture where officers were encouraged to engage in aggressive behavior to address violent crime and told they would not be disciplined for complaints from the community.
That was always been crooked things goes on.
Two of his nearby neighbors keep hurricane shutters up year-round on their windows, not for storms, but to keep bullets from entering their homes.
But I think the summary really confirms and validates the concerns of the community, which before now have, pretty much been dismissed as a figment of their imagination.
Reverend Dr. William Glover says there's been a culture of denial for years.
The lack of training, the lack of leadership, the painting of a reality that did not exist, and frankly the allegations of corruption. Those are all things that the community has been saying for years.
The community hopeful for the future.
We've seen some things since Chief Diggs has accepted a job that provides some encouragement and movement in the right direction.
I guess he'll need help some kind of way too.
In addition to those hurricane shutters, there's another neighbor who backs her car up right to her bedroom window. She says that way, if there's any gunfire in her neighborhood, her car would get hit before she does. There are certainly plenty of people looking forward to some change within the police department over the next 5 years. Live in Fort Myers, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston live now. And Michelle, Smith is blaming city leaders for issues with police.
That's right. He says it starts with City Hall, with leaders like the mayor, who didn't even finish reading the report until this weekend.
The city leaders didn't even read it. It's not even worth their time to go out and read it.
Attorney Sawyer Smith says the accusations in the Freeh report are disturbing.
Our leadership has sat over the top of a disaster of a police department. This is inexcusable neglect. This is gross negligence. The taxpayers of Fort Myers deserve better.
Last week, Wink News exclusively interviewed the Fort Myers mayor, who hadn't finished reading the report.
It's a priority, so let's get that clear. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
This morning, he released a statement calling it heartbreaking, saying he feels betrayed and responsible. Smith says it's not enough that the city has added new officers, body cameras, and a new police chief.
I think he's wrestling an alligator that's already got him underwater, is not going to let him go.
He says the only way to fix the problems is to do a complete overhaul, bringing in the Department of Justice.
They need to hand that department over.
Now, Wink News asked the mayor on Friday if he believes the Department of Justice should be brought in to investigate. He says it depends on the severity of the situation. Live in Fort Myers, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
It felt like I was in a dream. It didn't feel real.
48 unsolved murders in the city of Fort Myers in the past 5 years. Teens like Nathaniel Pitts killed in a drive-by shooting, and Dunbar High School senior Lawrence Lockley shot and killed sitting in a car.
I don't know why somebody would want to kill him. This was his last year in high school.
Do you trust the police?
Some of them I do, and some of them I don't.
Angela McCleary also lost her son to gun violence in Fort Myers.
And all I'm hearing is no new evidence, no witnesses.
She's one of many frustrated moms in the city, mourning the loss of her murdered child and struggling with how to work with the police on these unsolved crimes. This is another mom who says police never even contacted her after her son was killed.
Did nobody come to my house? No one showed up there. No one knocked on my door to reach out to me.
Angelo Gary was shot to death more than a decade ago. Does it feel like the case wasn't important, your son wasn't important to the police?
I really don't know.
With so many cases gone cold, these mothers say they aren't surprised by what they read in the Freeh report released last week, detailing serious allegations about the police department's inability to solve crimes.
For us to have to go to them that ask the status, I think that's very unfair because we're grieving a loss and we have not received justice.
Now, the Freeh report also says that some lab results and witness interviews in some of these homicide cases were not maintained. It also says that some records of investigative activity ended abruptly. Live in Fort Myers, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston is here in the studio to explain.
Criminal defense attorney Scott Morey says we aren't going to see a blanket dismissal of past convictions as a result of these officers mishandling investigations. But each case may need to be looked at one by one to find out if any of these officers were witnesses against the defense.
Did the defendant run the stop sign based on the officer's testimony? Were the drugs on his person or on the ground based on the officer's testimony? Many times juries want to believe what officers say. They're an officer, why would they lie? But at the same time, we see how many officers get caught up in illegal activity or things that are not above board, and those need to be taken into consideration too.
Close to 200 people were interviewed, more than half of them officers, in this scathing 72-page report. It highlights alarming accusations of officers tampering with evidence and not having the experience to do investigations.
I'd like to see more. I'd like to see exactly what's going on.
We asked criminal defense attorney Scott Morey if past cases handled by the department could be overturned.
Many of these cases and possible convictions are a result of a law enforcement officer's testimony as to what they saw happened or their investigation. If it comes to light that that officer has not been truthful or failed to do their job, then those cases may very well be reviewed.
I contacted the state attorney's office at noon today to find out if they'll investigate past cases involving the Fort Myers Police Department to see if any of them may be overturned based on what was released in this report. It's now 5 hours later and I have not heard back.
Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston live at the Riverside Community Center now. So, Michelle, what else did the chief have to say in that interview?
Chief Diggs said today that he often tells his officers to get on the bus, to be a part of the change in moving the department forward. He also said he tells them to treat everyone they come in contact with respect.
If I waste my time thinking about how we got to where we got, then I'll never get forward.
Fort Myers Police Chief Derek Diggs speaking on the radio this afternoon following a needs assessment released last week detailing corruption inside his department.
I was frustrated. I'm concerned.
The Freeh Group interviewed close to 200 people, including officers, and heard alarming accusations of drug planting, tipping off dealers, and a severe lack of training and staff. The chief says he's taking all 32 recommendations in the report seriously to fix the problems and make the department better.
We know we got a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of distrust out there. We're a long way to go, but we're heading in the right direction.
Since Diggs joined the force 6 months ago, he says he's created a gang suppression unit and has started to restructure.
Our crime has been trending downward.
Now he's calling on the community to not paint a broad brush on all officers.
Yes, the report is frustrating to see. Yes, I have strong concerns about the report. But the men and women of the police department are doing a good job in protecting our citizens. If we all embrace this report, not only as a police department, but as a community, and embrace making sure that the police department can accomplish all these recommendations, we're going to be a safer and a better city for it.
Now, we asked for a sit-down interview with the chief earlier this week. Our request is still being reviewed. Tonight's meeting begins at 7 o'clock here at the Riverside Community Park. Live in Fort Myers, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now. When police arrested Nate Allen in 2015, it took them hours to release him after they realized they had the wrong guy. Allen told me today there's a lot more in the report than just his case that proves there's a lack of training within the department.
That's like me running out on the field not knowing what to do, never playing safety before. I can't do my job effectively if I don't know what to do.
NFL star and Cape Coral native Nate Allen speaking only to Wink News about the investigation by the Freeh Group into the Fort Myers Police Department, detailing allegations of mistrust, inexperience, and lack of training.
It's still kind of overwhelming to think, man, this is actually going on in our police department.
Allen just recently sued Fort Myers police after being wrongfully arrested and put behind bars, incorrectly identified as a man who exposed himself in his car to a teenage girl. That man still on the loose, and Allen now speaking out about his experience with police.
I mean, it was just like, wow, like there's really corruption going on. Like right here in our city.
More than 100 officers were interviewed in the Freeh report.
In 2015, a high-profile individual was arrested and detained by officers.
Talking about Nate Allen's wrongful arrest.
There was an allegation that the then chief had not been truthful.
The report also mentions dozens of other cases, even unsolved homicides, that according to the report were mishandled.
After reading this and ignoring what we've been saying for years, city leadership should be absolutely ashamed of themselves.
I mean, I would hope that the city leaders would be biting at the bit to get stuff changed where it needs to be changed. This is really bigger than me. It's about everybody in this community and in this city. I mean, everybody deserves for the police department to be doing things the right way.
Now, Nate Allen told me he hopes the city will complete the 32 recommendations listed in the report. His attorney, though, doesn't believe the city can afford to make those changes and wants the Department of Justice to take over. Live in the studio, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
They are talking about the alarming report about the police department as a group. Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston has been following the story since it broke out. Now she's live at the City Council. Michelle, have City Council members discussed this report yet?
Well, they're just getting to it now. Councilmember Johnny Streets actually just finished talking about the report, calling it money well spent, but that it's time to get to the bottom of it. Now, let's give you a live look inside of the meeting now. People in the community also spoke during public comment. They say that they're concerned and have questions about how the city will pay for the recommendations listed in the report and when they'll be completed. The city manager and the police chief hope to have them all done within the next 5 years. The city manager is looking to approve creating a deputy police chief position tonight and adding 2 additional officers, which has a price tag of $322,000. Also an additional $75,000 for 24 laptops, docking stations, and printers for police cars.
Really expect that tonight we'll emerge out of this meeting with some direction forward, and I know that the council is very much ready to address it and make sure that we can hold the city manager and the team accountable.
Now, the city manager is also looking to hire an on-call legal advisor for the police department. That will be voted on tonight as well here at the city council meeting. We'll have a lot more on this meeting coming up tonight at 10 and 11. Live at City Hall tonight, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
We do need a Department of Justice investigation because of a lot of these problems are so deep-rooted.
One of the 32 recommendations in the Freeh Report, an audit paid for by the city that revealed low staffing, distrust, and alleged corruption within the police department, is to hire an outside agency to investigate the claims of officer misconduct.
This could have led to some, and it may have, some people's lives being taken that could have been prevented.
City Council member Johnny Streets made a motion last night to direct the city manager and the police chief to choose the Department of Justice, the FBI, FDLE, or the Attorney General to conduct the investigation. But the motion failed, with the majority of city councilors believing the city manager and the police chief will decide on their own which agency to choose.
The majority council did not feel it was pertinent last night, a few days after the audit, to direct the manager and the chief to go into investigating with another agency until they dive deeper into the report and see what's best way to do it.
The city attorney says the city manager has the authority on his own and doesn't need the direction of the council to use any of those 4 agencies.
It would be hard for me to support that motion because I believe we're already underway. We should let that leadership unfold.
Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
For the first time since its release, former police officer and current city councilman Johnny Streets sits down with Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston to talk about the root of the problem and how to move forward.
You do have inexperienced patrol officers. You do have inexperienced investigators.
Fort Myers City Councilor Johnny Streets says he's known about the deep-rooted problems in the police department.
I think the city owes me. This report is exactly what I've been saying over the years.
While not surprising, the allegations still hard to see on paper.
Someone leaking information to suspected drug dealers, someone using tactics that are not approved by the police department.
What did you see in the police department when you worked there? I know you were an officer there for 26 years.
I've had some experiences in the Fort Myers Police Department over the years. Some of them have been discriminatory, but I don't let that hold me back. I thought that there was a culture of people coming in that was going to have this thing to themselves, that this group was going to run this department. That's why I knew it was time for me to go.
Street says cleaning up the department is going to take more than a checkbook.
If you're going to put all the money in it and not correct the personnel that has created these problems and maybe still around, we're wasting our time.
Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now. From Baltimore to Chicago and cities in between.
There's a lot of work for us to do.
Cities are feeling a divide between the people and the police across the country, and the Department of Justice has stepped in over the years to investigate.
The goal is to be able to have a police department that has, where its officers have the support that they need, and where the community feels protected by its police department.
They're investigating or working with cities like New Orleans, Cleveland, and Miami, meeting with city leaders, community groups, reviewing policies, and observing officers.
Our investigations are never propelled by a single incident. We have to have a predicate of some notion that there might be a pattern of unconstitutional police practices.
Investigations like what we may see in the city of Fort Myers typically take months, and the city works with the investigative party on reforms. But Attorney General Jeff Sessions just recently announced he would prefer not to pursue so many investigations.
Help police departments get better, not diminish their effectiveness.
With Sessions looking to move away from federal reform of police departments, it's not clear what will come of the investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office into officer misconduct in Fort Myers. Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
Tonight, Wink News goes one-on-one with Fort Myers Police Chief Derek Diggs. Today was the first time he allowed our cameras in his office and his first interview since asking the feds to investigate his department.
We're going to move forward as a police department, and we're asking, and I'm asking the community now more than ever to start support us.
This is all in response to the Freeh Report, which was released on February 22nd. It took a highly critical look at the department through the eyes of 200 people, including officers. The report points to a buyout program nearly a decade ago as the beginning of the department's unraveling. Wink News reporter Michelle Kingston joins us live now from outside police headquarters. Michelle.
Since the report was released, the chief hasn't wanted to talk about it. He called the report concerning, but says the past is the past. He wants to move the department forward, and he's doing just that. What were you thinking when you started to read that?
I'm not going to talk about what happened when I first reaction and stuff. The bottom line is this. I was frustrated, and I'm concerned. But the report is the report. It's there.
Police Chief Derek Diggs talking one-on-one with Wink News.
They're going to find things that you don't like to hear or you don't want to see.
Just a little more than 2 weeks after a scathing 72-page report was released detailing heinous allegations of drug planting, officers leaking information to dealers about search warrants, and even officers moving up in rank without proper qualifications.
Yes, the Freeh Report identified some things. I'm concerned and frustrated about it. But I'm just as frustrated with folks not understanding that we're doing the right things for this police department that's understaffed, under-resourced, and yet we're getting the job done.
Chief Diggs joined the force less than a year ago and says he started working on recommendations listed in the Freeh Report on day one, and he's committed to completing all 32 of the recommendations within the next 5 years. How do you now take that and move forward, find the needle in the haystack, the people who are causing the problems within the department?
That's very simple. Follow the recommendations. That's the guidelines. That's the roadmap.
Chief today about his request to hire the U.S. Attorney's Office to investigate officer misconduct allegations within the department. He's unable to comment on that, but told us he's dedicated to moving the department forward and making it one the community can be proud of. Live in Fort Myers, Michelle Kingston, Wink News Now.
Michelle, thank you.